So I'm going to show you this video. This video I was sent to me. Doesn't matter who sent it to me, but watch this. This is a compilation of Benjamin Netanyahu warmongering. He seems like, I guess he's the permanent Israel prime minister. Watch this.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, we like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes, is Iraq and Iran. But a third nation, by the way, is Libya as well. Libya is trying very rapidly to build an atomic bomb capability. So you have here now 3 nations.
All stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror. I know that no matter on which side of the aisle you sit, you stand with Israel.
By the way, that's a command. That's an order he was giving to Congress. That wasn't him making an assessment. He was telling them, you stand with Israel. And then that's what they did. They all stood. So the seemingly permanent Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seen here revealing his history of getting everybody else to fight his wars except himself or his people. It's like he's part Hitler, part Tom Sawyer. That's right. He's Tom Hitler, ladies and gentlemen. And he is as pious a Jew as Vito Corleone was a good Catholic. When he says that he kept saying that we must overthrow Iraq, we must overthrow Russia, we must overthrow Libya and Iran. He just means you. He means you. That's what he's talking about. Let me bring in the 2 Jews from the Jew dissidents. First of all, what about him being the permanent prime minister? And isn't that whoever put that together, that's quite a compilation. It's a real wake-up call. So it seems like the real terrorists in the Middle East is Israel and not those other countries, correct?
But yeah, this is like his 3rd stint, I think, as prime minister. I believe it's his 3rd stint. But yeah, I mean, they give this as a dictation, right? I mean, they just dictate what our policy is going to be because, as RFK says, Israel is our aircraft carrier in the Middle East. They are our proxy in the region. And so we have to do what they want. They exert an enormous amount of influence. I think we're going to cover later on the show the $20 million that's being offered to a challenger to Rashida Tlaib, which she didn't even have the balls to vote against the resolution that equated anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. So, yeah, no, I mean, look, they just exert a tremendous amount of control. And that's what they're there for. That's why Joe Biden said famously, 30 years ago, maybe even longer, if there wasn't an Israel, we would have to create one. We need a proxy in the region there. And that is why we will back them no matter what. And they know we have to back them no matter what. So they exploit that relationship on their end by dictating, like he says there, you stand with Israel. Yes, we do. Everybody stands up.
Everybody stand.
Right, now, what do you think about Benjamin Netanyahu?
I think he's a very snappy dresser. I was trying to get into his sartorial taste the whole time. That was my amazing take. No, we did a piece the other night about The Nation ran an article a few months ago that went pretty much unremarked and unnoticed, demonstrating that everything that we claimed Russia did, Israel did in 2016. And if you look at a lot of the things that look like cover-ups, that even if you were a skeptic of Russiagate, you couldn't argue that some of the behavior wasn't suspicious. That is the missing piece of the puzzle. There was collusion. The Trump campaign was colluding with Israel. Yes, they were getting intelligence ahead of WikiLeaks dumps, but they were getting that information from Israel. basically everything you were told in Russiagate, you could attribute more or less to Israel. I think what we've really seen over the course of this Gaza war is how much of a just absolute blank check they have and how absolutely absurd it is when we talk about these dangerous foreign leaders. That's why that was one of the things I screamed at Rachel Maddow, because earlier in the evening she had talked about dangerous foreign leaders. I said, is Netanyahu a dangerous foreign leader? Clearly, he is a dangerous foreign leader. He is going before Congress multiple times, as you showed in this footage, trying to manipulate our country into getting into World War III, like his lesser light Zelensky does.
This is really kind of stunning, this video. I don't think you can overstate how crazy this is. And if you want to see who the real warmonger is in the Middle East, who the real psychopathic murderer is, or the guy who's the unstable terrorist in the Middle East, let's watch this again.
If you take away the Soviet Union and its chief proxy, the PLO, international terrorism would collapse.
If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region. Obviously, we like to see a regime change, at least I would, in Iran, just as I would like to see in Iraq. The question now is a practical question. It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how do it...
Are there any other nations that you would recommend that the United States launch preemptive attacks upon at this point?
The answer is categorically yes, is Iraq and Iran. But a third nation, by the way, is Libya as well. Libya is trying very rapidly to build an atomic bomb capability. So you have here now 3 nations.
All stand together to stop Iran's march of conquest, subjugation, and terror. I know that no matter on which side of the aisle you sit, you stand with Israel.
And all those clowns applauding are some of the most unscrupulous, easily corrupted motherfuckers you've ever met in your life. They're the opposite of integrity and dignity. They are bought and paid for, and they are cowards, and they will sell this country out for a nickel, and they already did. They've done it. They do it almost daily on the regular. They sell this country out. They sell this country out to a proxy war with Russia and Ukraine. They'll gladly send a couple of $100 billion to the most corrupt country in Europe to fill the pockets of their donors and to appease Israel before they send a nickel to the United States to help you get your health care, to help you get a living wage, or get clean water in Flint. There still isn't clean water in Flint. How many cities in that? It's not just Flint. There's lead poisoned water all over this country. There's people living under bridges all over this country. And instead of sending a couple of $1 billion to fix that, which is that's all it would take way less money to fix homelessness in America and fix all the water in America and all the bridges in America than we sent to Ukraine. It would take a lot less. So they got the money and they just don't want to give it to you because the billionaire class wants us living in a country that's filled with homeless people to the brim, that makes you feel unstable, that your job could be taken away from you at any moment, or you have to work 2 or 3 of them, and that you're still crushed under healthcare bills when you get sick. They want that because, remember, chaos and fear serves the oligarchy. And what they get you to do is blame your neighbor for all that pain and all that economic pain you're worrying about. And what did they get you to focus on instead? They get you to focus on #MeToo. They get you to focus on sex violence on campus. They get you to focus on Donald Trump as a fascist. They get you to focus on Nazis with tiki torches. They get you to focus on everything except the economic pain that's being inflicted upon you by the oligarchy, the handful of billionaires that run this country and run this world and own your media. And people who watch this show are waking up to that. We need more people to wake up to it. Let me throw it over to you. Any last comments on this?
I think one of the most heartening things about the reaction to Gaza is to see how many people are waking up to it. And I am particularly heartened by what's happening on campuses. We just covered that protest at Brown, where the dean tried to offer the customary kente cloth kind of gesture about the Palestinian students who were shot. And those kids were not having it. They were screaming about divesting from Israel, about not taking military contracts. So it seems like this is a big red pill moment, particularly for Gen Z. So it's encouraging.
You know, when one guy, meaning Benjamin Netanyahu, when one guy is walking around telling everybody else what the problems are in the outer world, eventually everybody figures out it's that one guy who's the problem. And it seems like that's what people are figuring out now. Hey, turns out Israel's the problem. Benjamin Netanyahu is the problem. Zionism is the problem, not Judaism. But that's exactly what they want to do. They want you to conflate Zionism with Judaism. Those are two totally separate things.
Yes.
And you can be 100% a hatred of Zionism, and that does not make you an anti-Semite. That does not make you anti-Jew or anti-Judaism. So that's what people need. And I think people are waking up to that too. I think just like when they called Bernie a sexist and a racist and violent, and then they said the same thing about Trump. Well, now those terms don't mean anything. And the same thing's happening with anti-Semitism. When you call everybody, 95% of all the protests in the world right now over Israel-Palestine are supporting Palestine. So when you call everybody in the world an anti-Semite, eventually that word doesn't mean anything. And I think we're to that point right now where anti-Semite doesn't mean anything.
Well, that's why it's so important for people to come out, because they can't brand everybody an anti-Semite, right? That's where strength in numbers comes in. If the protests are small, small groups can be marginalized easily because they're small, right?
Yeah, that's right. But when it's everybody, you can't marginalize everybody. Okay, over to...
And we're seeing more and more Jews coming out and telling their stories. Adam Friedland just did a really interesting segment. We also showed that Jewish woman who was talking about how she should have asked questions sooner. More and more Jews are coming out and talking about how, you are raised as a Jew very often to believe that you have an obligation to defend Israel, and that if you don't, you're betraying Judaism. And so many Jews are just getting red pilled and realizing they were brainwashed.
You were ahead of the curve on this, Russ. You got yourself kicked out of Hebrew school because you didn't give a shit about going back to Israel, correct?
Yes, I did. I did. They told me we were all going to have to go back, and all my friends were like Italian Catholic. I didn't want to leave all my friends in America and go live in Israel.
We're doing live comedy shows in Oxnard, California, Venice, California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Nebraska, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Michigan, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, and Boston. Plus, we're going to put a date in Edmonton, Canada, plus Vancouver. See ya. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets.